For 3 years in a row now, Israel has experienced net negative migration. In other words, more Israelis have left the country than entered it. According to a new report published earlier this month by researchers at Tel Aviv University, in each of 2023, 2024, and 2025, around 50,000 Israelis left the country for more than 12 months, the longest continuous period of Israeli emigration in history. This has raised concerns about the future of the Israeli economy, as more high-earning Israelis take their careers and tax revenues overseas, while the remaining population becomes more religious and less economically productive. Specifically, the ultra-orthodox Haredim, among whom 53% of men are unemployed, are set to make up a quarter of the population by 2050. So in this video, we'll explain Israel's emigration crisis, and why the long-term economic outlook is pretty bleak. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu promised a total regime change in Iran, but so far that hasn't happened. We explain why Trump was wrong and what post-war Iran leadership might actually look like in the 9th issue of our magazine, Too Long. That's just one of the articles in our longest issue ever. Subscribe to get your copy by clicking the link in the description. Let's start with Israel's emigration crisis. According to a new report from Tel Aviv University, in each of 2023, 2024, and 2025, around 100,000 Israelis, roughly 1% of the population, left the country for more than 3 months, the highest and most sustained period of emigration on record. Meanwhile, the number leaving Israel for a period of more than 12 months hovered at around 50,000 in 2023 and 2024. While the full 2025 data won't be available until the start of 2027, researchers have found a very strong correlation between the 3-month and 12-month measures. And they're able to estimate that, like in 2023 and 2024, another 45 to 50,000 Israelis left the country in 2025. Crucially, while this isn't abnormal by international standards, it's unprecedented by Israeli standards. In the 2010s, immigration to Israel accounted for 20% of annual population growth, and Israel has only seen net negative migration a couple of times in its history. Once in the 1980s, driven by a severe economic crisis that saw inflation skyrocket to around 400%, and once in the 1950s, driven by economic hardship resulting from the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Both times, emigration from Israel was driven by economic factors, and both times, Israel's demographic stability quickly recovered. This time, however, Israel's exodus is largely a result of its prolonged military conflict in Gaza and Lebanon, and the corresponding political situation, which doesn't look likely to be resolved soon. For context, in early 2023, before the Israel-Hamas war, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu launched a controversial set of judicial reforms, which would expand the government's powers over judicial appointments. This sparked huge nationwide protests in Israel, with protesters accusing the government of undermining Israel's system of checks and balances and consolidating power. Then, in October 2023, Hamas launched a major attack on Israel, prompting Netanyahu to invade Gaza and plunging Israel into a years-long war that also spread to conflicts with Hezbollah in Lebanon and against Iran. This ongoing security crisis has, in turn, led to the departure of more than 150,000 Israelis over the past 3 years, especially more secular and liberal Israelis who were already concerned about Israel's political direction under Netanyahu. But why does this matter for Israel's economy? Well, it's bad news for 2 intertwined reasons. First, many of those leaving are highly skilled workers, leading to a possible brain drain on high-earning Israelis. Second, the remaining population is becoming more religious and less economically productive, with Israel's ultra-orthodox Haredi community now growing at twice the rate of the general population. The first and main reason why this exodus is bad for Israel's economy is that, according to a study published by Israel's tax authority early this month, an increasing share of those leaving are high earners working in tech and healthcare, like doctors and engineers. The study found that the rate at which affluent Israelis left the country sharply increased in 2023 and 2024 to roughly double what it was in 2019. This has fueled concerns about the potential loss of tax revenue, with the report estimating losses of about 700 million shekels, or $240 million, for each year of emigration, rising to 3.5 billion shekels, or $1.2 billion within 5 years, if this trend continues. This supposed brain drain is especially concerning given Israel's economic role as a global tech and military tech hub. In recent decades, Israel has become somewhat of a startup incubator, with some of the highest venture capital investment per capita globally, and significant tech and research and development sectors. As such, any continued brain drain of high-skilled Israelis could significantly weaken the foundations of Israel's economy, with further knock-on impacts for Israel's public finances and even its military. The second reason that Israel's economy looks doomed long-term, and the flip side of this brain drain, is that the burden for sustaining Israel's economy now passes to the remaining population, which is becoming increasingly religious and less economically productive. For context, the Haredim, an Israeli ultra-orthodox group which separate themselves from secular society and are politically associated with the Israeli far right, have some of the highest birth rates in Israel, with an average of 6 to 7 children per woman, roughly double the Israeli average. Because of this, while the Haredim currently make up about 14% of the total population, they're set to make up a quarter by 2050, creating major structural problems given the Haredim's low workforce participation rate and low economic output. While Haredi women work at higher rates, the unemployment rate among Haredi men is 53%, compared to just 3% for the overall Israeli population. And on top of this, the Haredi also receive generous subsidies for their religious education, independent schools, and child allowances. In fact, according to economist Dr. Michael Sherrill, the average Haredi household receives a net 6,000 shekels, or $2,000 per month, from the Israeli state, while the average non-Haredi Jewish household pays a net 8,800 shekels, or $2,970 per month, to the state, an almost 15,000 shekel, or $5,000 gap. This will obviously create long-term problems if the Haredi community continues growing faster than the Israeli population at large. As the economy increasingly depends on the tax revenues from a smaller number of secular workers, who also carry more burden from the military service, given the Haredim's exemption, more of the economic burden falls to high-earning, highly skilled workers, so the incentive for them to emigrate only increases. Moreover, according to Gilad Cohen-Kovac, a researcher at the Israel Democracy Institute, the subsidies that support the current Haredi model amount to about 35 to 37 billion shekels a year, or roughly 5.5% of the Israeli state budget, with that figure potentially growing to more than 60 billion shekels, or $20 billion, in the coming decades if nothing changes. As such, the next Israeli election in October, which will pit Netanyahu's right-wing coalition against a largely secular opposition, could be a make-or-break moment for Israel's economic future. If the opposition wins and more liberal-minded Israelis begin returning from overseas, the structural pressure on the economy could alleviate. But if there's no political change, or more political turmoil, then Israel's exodus and the war-induced economic strain may yet worsen. I've already told you about one of the articles in the next issue of Too Long, but there's so much more inside that you're going to want to discover. So if you subscribe using code SUMMER26, you'll not only get 20% off every issue as a subscriber, you'll also get an additional £3 off your first copy, bringing the cost as low as $4.99 for a digital edition. And yes, if shipping, or increasingly tariffs, are making deliveries to wherever you live a little bit expensive, you can get a digital version sent straight to your inbox. Plus, we actually earn more from the digital editions, as we actually lose money on shipping, so it's also a better way to support the channel. This is a good first issue to jump on board with too. It's our longest ever at 84 pages and contains stories from all across the world, including Burnham here in the UK, the wars in Ukraine and Iran, China and the US's relationship, a bit from the Vatican, and of course, our cover story on the plan to rebuild Europe. It also features articles from our superb new writers, Natasha, Isaac, and Ebba. So make sure to use code SUMMER26 at checkout and become a Too Long subscriber today.